Today's message is from Psalm 24. Today's text says that this world and all things in this entire universe belong to Jehovah, and it also speaks about who can truly enter that heaven and stand before God, and therefore, it says that our people of God must open the doors of their hearts to welcome the King of Glory and believe. Then, how is it being spoken? Today, I would like to look into this and share the grace. First, today's text says that this world and all things in this entire universe belong to Jehovah. In Psalm 24 verses 1 to 2 of today's text, "The earth is the Lord's, and everything in it, the world, and all who live in it, for he founded it on the seas and established it on the waters," it says. The earth is the Lord's, and everything in it, the world, and all who live in it. Here, earth and world are used as couplets to refer to this entire world in which we humans live. Also, here, everything in it and all who live in it are also couplets, referring to all those things that fill this entire world. For example, the grass, trees, and animals on those plains, the birds flying in that sky, and the fish and turtles in that sea. And even our people and livestock, it refers to all these things. That is, this word right now says that all these things belong to Jehovah. Why is that? For he founded it on the seas and established it on the waters. Now, at the very front of this sentence, the Hebrew conjunction key is used to speak about the reason why everything in this world belongs to Jehovah. What is the reason? The reason is said to be that our God founded this entire world and all things in the universe on those seas and established them on those rivers. What does this mean? In Genesis 1 verses 9 to 10, "And God said, Let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear. And it was so. God called the dry ground land, and the gathered waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good," it says. "And God said, Let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear. And it was so." Now, this word is speaking about our God's creation. No, this word is a synecdochic expression, representatively showing one aspect of our God's creation. That is, today's text says, regarding the reason why everything in this world belongs to Jehovah, it is because God created this world and all things in this entire universe. No, it is that this world and all things in this entire universe are all God's creatures built and made by God. God made the land, the sea, and the rivers, and he made all the living creatures in that land, the living creatures in that sea, and the living creatures in the rivers. The animals playing on those plains, the birds flying over that sky, and the fish in that sea. No, he made even our humans as well. It is all Jehovah's. Therefore, this world and all things in this entire universe all belong to Jehovah. Is it not so? We also have memories of making some sculptures during some art class when we were in elementary school. Needing clay to make a bird, a dog, a cat, or a lion that one wants to make. Then, whose things do those become? It becomes the property of the person who made that sculpture. It is so, and not otherwise. It does not become the property of the person next to them or some friend. This is the same for all things in this entire universe. Because God made all things in this entire universe, they belong to God. However, the reason for saying Jehovah's here has another reason, purpose, and intention. That is to remind us of God's purpose of creation. That is, what is the purpose for which our God created this world and all things in this entire universe? It is only for the glory of our God. Therefore, if we humans are God's creatures, we should naturally praise and exalt only God who is the owner of ourselves. We should live by following God's will and by obeying his word. Also, rather than living to satisfy my own desires and satisfaction, we should live for the name and glory of God. No, we should always think of God, rely on God, and live within God. It is wrong to deviate from this purpose of creation and serve some other idols, or act as a servant of Satan, or live only following one's own corrupt and fallen desires. However, all things in this entire universe in this world have deviated from God's purpose of creation and have become corrupt and fallen. As a result, all things in this entire universe in this world are acting as servants of corruption, and all are moving toward that eternal judgment, that eternal destruction. No, all of us humans have become so corrupt and fallen that no one can even approach God or even stand before him. This is exactly the meaning contained in what is said here as belonging to Jehovah. Secondly, today's text speaks about who can truly enter that heaven and stand before God. In Psalm 24 verses 3 to 4 of today's text, who may ascend the mountain of the Lord? Who may stand in his holy place? The one who has clean hands and a pure heart, who does not trust in an idol or swear by a false god, it says. Who may ascend the mountain of the Lord? Who may stand in his holy place? Here, this mountain of the Lord and holy place are used as couplets, and while they primarily refer to that holy temple mount where God's presence resides, namely, Jerusalem, ultimately they refer to that heaven or God. Of course, this could be called a poetic expression, but on the other hand, it shows the religious atmosphere of that era. That is, we can see that the people of Israel of that era, rather than directly mentioning our God as Jehovah, used to represent that existence through a roundabout expression with euphemistic language. This was also a way to be wary of speaking God's name in vain and to express a heart that fears and reveres God even a little bit more. In other words, this word right now can be said to be close to a lament and a sigh, saying, who can truly enter that heaven, and who can truly stand before God? In other words, we humans are so corrupt and fallen that no one can enter that heaven or even stand before God. If so, who can enter that heaven and also stand before God? The one who has clean hands. First, all the commandments of the law appearing here below are synecdochic expressions, representing all of God's commandments of the law. What is called hands here is also a synecdochic expression, representing all the words, actions, and the entire life of our humans. That is, to have clean hands represents a person who is innocent, guiltless, and flawless in all those words, actions, and life, and in whom no sin can be found. How is it? Could there truly be a person who can live like this? Could there truly be such a person who is innocent, guiltless, and flawless in all those words, actions, and life, and in whom no sin can be found? Perhaps there will be no one who can live like this. Because we humans are so corrupt and fallen that everyone is a being who cannot help but live committing all kinds of sins. So, if only such a guiltless, flawless, and clean person can enter that heaven and also stand before God, perhaps there will be no such person in this world. A pure heart. Here, to have a pure heart also refers to a person whose heart is pure, clean, and has not even one sin. That is, it can be said to be a person who doesn't know how to hate others even a little bit, doesn't know how to be jealous or envious even a little bit, doesn't quarrel, has no greed, accompanies 10 miles if asked to go 5, gives even the inner garment if asked for the outer garment, no, loves even my enemy like my own life. How is it? Could there truly be a person who can live like this? Could there truly be a person who doesn't know how to hate others even a little bit, doesn't know how to be jealous or envious even a little bit, doesn't quarrel, has no greed, and accompanies 10 miles if asked to go 5, and gives even the inner garment if asked for the outer garment? Perhaps there will be no such person. So, if only a person like this whose heart is pure and clean and has not even one sin can enter that heaven and also stand before God, there will be no one who does not trust in an idol. Here, this word trust, will/soul, is nephesh in Hebrew, which refers to our human soul, and on the other hand, it also represents the emotions, longings, love, joy, and will of that soul. That is, what is called not trusting the soul in idols, vain things, here most basically refers to not setting one's soul on serving idols, and further, it can be said to be not setting one's longings, wishes, joys, or will on the things of this world. For example, to love and rely on my child, my husband, or my parents more than God is to set my will and my soul on vain things. Also, to love and rejoice in money, honor, popularity, or anything else in the world more than God is to set not only my soul but also the longings, desires, joys, or will of my soul on vain things. Because acting like this can be said to be the same as serving another idol in a way. Anyway, here too, there will be no one in this world who can live without setting their will on such vain things. Or swear by a false god. Looking here, this word swear is appearing. What is this swearing, oath? We can see that the people of Israel in that Old Testament era used to make this promise of an oath when they entered into some covenant with the neighboring tribes. This can be said to be a promise made in the name of the God they themselves serve. That is, it is a confession that they themselves are those who serve such a God, and it is a promise that stakes their life, in a way, saying that if they themselves break that promise, they may receive any punishment from that God they serve. Therefore, a person who makes a false oath, that is, a person who lightly breaks and shatters the promise they made, can be said to be one who denies the God they themselves serve and deeply ignores and despises that God. So, the Mosaic law strictly prohibits swearing falsely. Otherwise, at any time, whatever the promise may be, once an oath is made, it must be kept at the risk of one's life. But how are we humans? We can see that we always do not keep the words or promises we made, being different in the morning and different in the evening. At some times, even the words of the oath one made are not remembered at all. Now, how is it? Today's text says that only such people as have been discussed all along previously can enter that heaven and also stand before God. That is, a person whose actions are not flawless even a little bit and has no sin even a little bit, no, a person whose heart does not even commit sin, and a person who loves God more passionately than anything else in this world, and a person who doesn't know how to lie even a little bit, etc. It says that only such people can enter that heaven and also stand before God. Now, then, how many people could truly there be who can live like this? Probably, in my opinion, I think there will not be even a single person in this world who can live like this. In other words, all of us humans are beings who can neither enter that heaven nor stand before God, and can only die eternally. Then, why is David speaking like this here? As if you keep and perform all these laws, you can enter that heaven and stand before God. That is the same as the reason why our God gave the law to Moses. Then, what is the reason God gave the law to Moses? In Romans 3 verse 20 as well. Therefore no one will be declared righteous in God's sight by the works of the law, rather, through the law we become conscious of our sin, it says. Through the law we become conscious of our sin. It says that the law was given not to save us humans, but to make us realize sin. That is, the reason God gave the law to Moses is to make the people of Israel realize sin, and to realize that they have become unable to help but die eternally because of that sin, so that finally, by believing in the merit of the blood of the Messiah whom God sends, they may be justified freely, become God's people and stand before God, no, to make it possible for them to enter that heaven. No, the Bible always speaks about this in this same way. From beginning to end, the Bible declares that we humans are beings who are eternally judged and cannot help but die eternally because of sin. So, in order to be saved from such despair and destruction, one must accept and believe in the merit of the blood of the Messiah whom God sends. This is the same for David. What David wants to say through today's text now is exactly the same as this. It is not different even a little bit. We humans, through God's law, must know and realize how corrupt and fallen beings we are. Also, because of such sin, we must know that everyone is fallen in that eternal destruction, and we must accept and believe in the merit of the blood of the Messiah, that blood, whom God sends. And it is that only such a person is called righteous freely before God, becomes God's people, can enter that heaven, and also stand before God. In Psalm 24 verses 5 to 6 of today's text as well. They will receive blessing from the Lord and vindication from God their Savior. Such is the generation of those who seek Him, who seek your face, God of Jacob, Selah, it says. They will receive blessing from the Lord and vindication from God their Savior. Here, this person called they refers to those who know their own deficiencies and shortcomings, and realize what sin is through this law, and realize that they themselves have come to die eternally because of these sins, and believe in the merit of the blood of the Messiah whom God sends. Also, here vindication, righteousness, refers to God's righteousness which is clothed upon those who believe in the merit of the blood of the only begotten Son. That is, we can see that God removes all sins and freely calls righteous everyone who believes in the merit of the blood of the only begotten Son, and it refers exactly to this. That is, this word right now means that whoever realizes through this law that they themselves are a being who cannot help but die eternally, and believes in the merit of the blood of the Messiah only begotten Son sent by God, will have all their sins removed and will be freely called righteous. No, it is that only such a person will receive blessing from God and thus be able to stand before God and enter that heaven. Such is the generation of those who seek Him, who seek your face, God of Jacob, Selah. Here, the demonstrative pronoun such refers to those who realize that they themselves are sinners who cannot help but die eternally because of sin, as discussed in the first half, and were called righteous by God by believing in the merit of the blood of the only begotten Son. Also, here, the generation of those who seek Jehovah means a group that has the same spiritual direction of seeking Jehovah, namely, seeking Jesus the Messiah sent by God, after realizing that they themselves cannot be saved through the works of the law. No, it refers to such a special group that received blessing from God, for whom the act itself of seeking Jesus the Messiah sent by God becomes their status and identity. Also, here God of Jacob reminds us of the God who had promised to give blessing to Jacob at that ford of the Jabbok River. At that time, we can see that God promised that he would take all the people belonging to Jacob as God's people, become their God, and give blessing. Also, here, those who seek the face of the God of Jacob is used as a couplet with the generation of those who seek Jehovah coming before it, referring to those who realize that they themselves are sinners who cannot help but die eternally because of sin, and in such despair, seek and find the grace of God who promised to give blessing to Jacob. In other words, we God's people who were saved by believing in the merit of the blood of the only begotten Son are such blessed ones who have come to participate in the covenant God gave to Jacob. In other words, a person who realizes through the law that they themselves are a sinner who cannot help but die eternally because of sin, and is saved by believing in the merit of the blood of the only begotten Son, is truly blessed. No, it is that only such a person, by the grace of God, can approach God, stand, and enter that heaven. Lastly, today's text says that therefore our people of God must open the doors of their hearts to welcome the King of Glory and also believe. In Psalm 24 verses 7 to 10 of today's text, "Lift up your heads, you gates, be lifted up, you ancient doors, that the King of Glory may come in." Who is this King of Glory? The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, you gates, lift them up, you ancient doors, that the King of Glory may come in. Who is he, this King of Glory? The Lord Almighty, he is the King of Glory, Selah, it says. Lift up your heads, you gates, be lifted up, you ancient doors. Here, this gate does not refer to the gate of that temple, but refers to the door of our human heart. Also, this is a synecdochic expression, which also represents our entire human existence, and here it personifies it as if it were a person. Then, why is it expressed as ancient doors, eternal doors? That is intended to specifically designate our God's people among many people, meaning that our God's people are such beings who live eternally. Therefore, our God's people should naturally open the doors of their hearts and welcome and believe in Jesus the Messiah who is coming to this earth in the future. Is that why? Jesus says in Revelation 3 verse 20, "Here I am. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with that person, and they with me," he says. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with that person. Now, this word is a word that Jesus gave appearing to his disciple John on that island of Patmos around AD 90, decades after he died bleeding on the cross, was buried, rose again as a spiritual body on the third day and ascended. Now, this word also says that our lives should open the doors of our hearts and welcome our Jesus, the Messiah who came to this earth, be with him, share fellowship, and also praise and exalt him. It is not that one can be saved just by coming to church like this and offering worship. Also, it is not that one receives salvation just by coming to church like this and doing service, offering offerings, and offering prayers. Then, what should be done? First, we must open the doors of our hearts and welcome our Jesus, the Messiah who came to this earth, be with him, share fellowship, and also praise and exalt him. Then, our Jesus will enter into that person, make that person a temple, be with them, protect them, and guide them to that heaven. Now, let's return to today's text again. Therefore, our God's people must open the doors of their hearts, welcome that Messiah King of Glory, and also believe. That is, one must definitely welcome and also believe in the Messiah, that King of Glory, whom God sends to this earth in order to save us. Then, what will happen? The King of Glory may come in. Of course, here this King of Glory refers to Jesus the Messiah who is coming to this earth in the future. That is, like this, when our God's people open the doors of their hearts and welcome and believe in that King of Glory will enter into that person, make that person a temple, and be with that person eternally. Then, how is that King of Glory introduced? Who is this King of Glory? The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Here, strong and mighty in battle are used as couplets to supplementally explain the meaning. First, here strong and mighty means that the Messiah Jesus is strong and powerful in saving us. Also, here mighty in battle also means that the Messiah Jesus is powerful and strong in the battle with that Satan. Actually, we can confirm that Jesus, by dying bleeding on the cross, crushed all the authority of that Satan, devastated its camp, and deactivated all its armament. In Colossians 2 verse 15. And having disarmed the powers and authorities, he made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them by the cross, it says. And having disarmed the powers and authorities, he made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them by the cross. The Common Translation Bible translates this as follows. By the cross, he captured the celestial gods of power and force, deactivated their armament, and made them a spectacle, leading them in a triumphal march. That is, Jesus, by dying bleeding on the cross, by removing all sins for those who believe in this, crushed the power of Satan, who was reigning as king over our humans by using the law that the price of sin is death, and devastated its camp. Also, looking at Revelation 19, we can see that Jesus is performing wars with the forces of Satan even at this moment, in order to save his own people chosen from before eternity. As if riding a white horse on a battlefield and fighting a battle, we can see him being active here and there in all directions along with those who follow him. That is, through the workers of the gospel who follow him, he makes them declare Jesus heaven, unbelief hell, and we can also see him dispatching missionaries to that Africa and the Amazon jungle. Like this Messiah Jesus is one who is strong and mighty to save us, no, powerful in the spiritual battle with that Satan. But that Messiah Jesus is none other than Jehovah God. No, that Messiah Jesus is one who is equal with Jehovah God. So, what should be done? Lift up your heads, you gates, be lifted up, you ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. So, God's people should naturally open the doors of their hearts and welcome that Messiah, that King of glory, and also believe. Then, that King of glory, that Jehovah God, will enter into you, make you a temple, and always be with you at all times. While doing so, today's text emphasizes once more who that Messiah Jesus is and who that King of glory is. Who is he, this King of glory? The Lord Almighty, he is the King of glory. That Messiah Jesus, that King of glory, is none other than Jehovah of hosts. Here, this Jehovah of hosts means Jehovah God, who created this world and all things in this entire universe and governs and rules all those things he built according to his will. But he does not rule randomly, but it means he is a God who governs and rules everything according to his will in an orderly, perfect, and flawless manner, as if commanding an army. Exactly because it is so, this salvation plan of Jehovah God will be perfectly fulfilled without even a single error. No, that Messiah Jesus is Jehovah God, who is strong and mighty to save, no, powerful in the battle with that Satan. This very person is the Messiah Jesus, who is coming to this earth in the future to save us, and he is the King of glory. Lift up your heads, you gates. God. Thank you. Thank you. I love you. Thank you for sending that Messiah King of glory to save us. May you bestow blessings so that we may welcome, accept, and believe in that Messiah, the King of glory, Jehovah God, and thus enter that heaven and become those who stand before God. I bless and pray in the name of Jesus. Amen.